I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Legislative Commission on Cybersecurity. It is Thursday, January 8th, 2026, and we are having a remote meeting via Zoom today. All the members and participants are participating remotely. We had no ability to, or we had limited ability to find a room. There's a lot going on in the Capitol this week, and so we're having this meeting remotely. Welcome. And our first item on the agenda today is to approve the minutes from October 27th, 2025. Could I request a motion from a member for voting on the minutes?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Zhang moves the minutes. Are there any questions or discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, please, if you could please turn on your camera so we can vote on the minutes, and it's voice vote. Members, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The minutes from October 27th, 2025 are approved. And I will mention, I don't know, I guess for the people watching online, we do have a quorum present. I should have mentioned that first. But we do have a quorum present, and we will also have guests. We have also present Brandon Hirsch from Minute, and then our guests from the National Guard. And I think that's all I need to do to get started. And our next item on the agenda is a presentation from the Minnesota National Guard. Back quite a long time ago, in August of last year, we had a meeting where we had a presentation from the city of St. Paul about the incident in St. Paul. And part of the discussion, we talked about the work that the National Guard had done with that, responding to that incident. And there was discussion about whether there was potential for future opportunities for either incident response or training and planning responses that we could either see happen independently or with assisting legislation. And so today we have three members here, or three participants here, who will provide a presentation about current status of the cyber operations, and hopefully, we can have some discussion about what we see as possible future ideas for mutual aid or support of local entities. And so I'm not sure who wants to get started, but we have Scott Roeder, who is Executive Director of Military Affairs. We have Lieutenant Colonel Brian Morgan, who is the Director of Cyber Coordination for the Department of Military Affairs, and Lieutenant Colonel Eric Athman, who is Director of Operations for the Department of Military Affairs. And gentlemen, thank you very much for attending today. And if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, I'd appreciate it.
Madam Chair, thank you for the introduction. It's an honor to be able to present in front of you today. So without further ado, I'm going to share our presentation deck. Please let me know if it comes through okay and that you can see it, and then we'll get started.
Yes, I can see the presentation.
Wonderful. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Brian Morgan, like you mentioned, Director of Cyber Coordination for the Department of Military Affairs. I serve full-time as a state military officer to coordinate cyber activities between the National Guard and our state and federal partners. And so a few years ago, the Cyber Coordination Cell was funded by the state and was brought online. I was brought in as the first director of the team, and I've had the benefit of being able to put the team together from the ground up. And so I'd like to walk you through today a little bit about what our mission is, what our purpose is, and then some activities we've been engaging in to accomplish our mission. So, Madam Chair, the mission statement is in front of you, and it's really kind of concise. Our primary goal and everything we do is directed towards ensuring that the Minnesota National Guard Cyber Operations Forces are prepared to respond to state or federal requests for any military cyber operations support. And that can mean a state domestic emergency similar to what happened with St. Paul last July, or a federal activation of our cyber forces to support a more widespread distributed type event. So our goal is to make sure that our forces are trained, and there's a lot of things we do to make sure that happens. In the pictures here, you'll see the 4 team members in uniform. On the left is Chief Warrant Officer Matthew Harberts, myself, First Lieutenant Nikki Weiss, part of the Air Force, and then we have Mark O'Reilly, Chief Warrant Officer to Mark O'Reilly as well. And on the right, you'll see us at the Cybersecurity Summit this year running a public sector village in concert with Minnesota IT Services. And this is us out of uniform as well, just to kind of keynote the fact that we do a lot of public engagement work as well. Moving on to how we accomplish our mission. So there's 3 primary lines of effort that our team focuses on in order to make sure that we're successful with accomplishing that mission. The first one is we take a lot of effort to make sure that we're optimizing the cyber forces, and we'll talk more later about exactly who those cyber forces are. But one of our key jobs is to make sure that the training activities that the cyber forces undertake within the Minnesota National Guard are being directed towards the most significant risks. And that requires a knowledge about what's happening across the globe, what's happening across the nation, what's happening regionally and locally to understand what those risks are. And so what we're trying to do is counter those risks by making sure that the folks in the seats are training against those scenarios. And that includes ransomware incident response, like what happened in St. Paul, vulnerability assessments, security monitoring, threat hunting and clearing, as well as critical infrastructure and operational technology response as well. Our second line of effort is we recognize that in order to be successful during an emergency, the trust building doesn't start during the emergency, or it shouldn't start. It starts well in advance. So we pay a lot of special attention and dedicate a lot of our time and resources towards cultivating and maintaining strong relationships to build that mutual trust with the relevant stakeholders. And that includes federal agencies, to include our CISA, CSA for the region, the FBI Cyber Office up in Brooklyn Park, and then the state agencies as well, Minnesota IT Services, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Homeland Security Emergency Management, and others. We also participate and collaborate and design, in some cases, tabletop exercises, and even participate in live cyber training exercises at the national level as well, and regional. And then we try to make sure that everyone is basically comfortable with the process and models that we have in place, and everybody knows their role in the event of an emergency. And our third line of effort, we also equip the cyber forces. So as part of our budget that we were authorized, we purchased, maintain, manage, update, and ensure are prepared a set of tools and computers and servers which can be deployed in the event of a cyber emergency. And we maintain those equipment here in the Cedar Street Armory within our laboratory. And so one of our roles is to have subject matter experts who are capable of maintaining that equipment in real time, making sure it's patched and secure itself, and then can be readily and easily deployed at a moment's notice to any sort of emergency scenario within the state, no matter where it is. That equipment contains its own out-of-band internet connectivity. So in the event of St. Paul, for instance, where they didn't have internet connectivity, we did use that equipment to deploy our own internet connectivity, which was very useful. We'll get more into that later. So a little bit about the C3 team ourselves. The 4 of us that you saw in the photo earlier comprise the entire cyber coordination cell. We're not an incident response team ourselves, although we are usually on site during an incident, but we are a planning, coordination, and strategy development office. Our activities set the conditions to enable our cyber forces to respond, and we are the primary coordination office for all military cyber response events. As mentioned before, we also acquire and maintain that cyber incident response equipment for use. We establish partnerships with those stakeholders many of whom I mentioned earlier. We're prepared to support the Department of War in a federal capacity if ordered. We are also prepared to support the governor in a state emergency as ordered. We enhance those cyber force readiness and skills through academic partnerships. Our number one academic partnership is with Metro State University. We partner very closely with them. We perform operational technology training in their laboratory. We hold our symposium with them. We have a very good relationship with Metro State. We're trying to expand that to other universities as well. We also support the state's whole of state cybersecurity plan, which is chartered by Minnesota IT Services through various mechanisms. Many of those include supporting the cybersecurity navigators with their engagements across the state, local, tribal, and territorial entities, providing assessment feedback to stakeholders within the state. But we do find ourselves in a supporting role to Minute in that regard. We also encourage adoption of the state subsidized security resources that Minute offers, to include the EDR platform at a subsidized cost and Minute interconnectivity as a whole and the security benefits that that system offers. We encourage entities we visit to adopt those services and not try to take it all on themselves. So we see that as another role of ours in terms of the prevention space. We also coordinate cyber operations efforts for the state partnership program between Norway and Croatia, our two Minnesota state partners. We plan and execute a lot of the cyber events with those two partner nations, and we've had a lot of great learnings come from that experience. We have involvement in many exercises of a cyber nature to include Cyber Lucretia in Wisconsin, which is an annual event, Cyber Shield out in Virginia Beach every year, and then Cyber Flag, which is a cyber command exercise as well. So we try to participate in those exercises and then get the cyber forces as well to participate too for training value. And then cyber officer career management on the military side, we do a lot of work to make sure that the pipeline of cyber officers, which are growing into the institution, are managed properly, and that includes and is benefited from our relationship with academic stakeholders like Metro State, which just introduced this last year a credit transfer program, which allows military cyber officers, warrant officers, and enlisted personnel to gain about 45 credits towards a master's degree in cyber ops into their program, which upskills our people and helps Metro State as well. So it's very synergistic. A little bit of the hierarchy for you here, ma'am. So governor at the top, adjutant general below, chief of staff. We have John McCrae as a J3. He's the operations director under the chief. And then I'm under him as a C3 director. And then we have the team right there. Of note, we are state military status, and the others are not. So a little bit more about the cyber forces. I promised you I'd kind of explain that a little bit more for you, ma'am. So what we have here is we really have two primary source of cyber forces, and then the C3 is sort of the coordination element, although, like I mentioned before, for like St. Paul, we were on site during the mission, helping where we could, but that's not our primary role. Our primary role is coordination. But you'll see here the two primary elements we have in the state that are capable and certified to perform cyber incident response are the 177th Cyber Protection Team, who I know has presented before this committee. And there's about 40 soldiers on that team. They're all Army. The Defensive Cyber Operations element, which is about 5 soldiers and airmen right now, it fluctuates between usually 5 and 10. And that is a joint team where the Air Force actually contributes part of their force structure to that team on a rotational basis. And that is our joint cyber operations team that lives at Joint Force Headquarters. They partner very closely and train with the 77th Cyber Protection Team, and their mission is pretty much aligned with the protection team. It's the federal mission that the CPT also has. Of special note, I will call your attention to the bottom of the slide. These teams are almost entirely what we traditionally call M-Day soldiers or traditional guardsmen. There's only one member of this entire group that is full-time, and that it was 2 before, but now it's just 1. And everyone else is working at corporate America or for government, you know. So when we have an event or an activation event, we have to put all these soldiers on orders through the right authority and then bring them in out of their, you know, their normal lives to do it. They love doing it, of course, but it is just something to note. And then as far as training to be considered trained for one of these roles, it typically takes anywhere between 7 months to 2 years. And that has a lot to do with just the vast amount of specialized training they get at camps like Fort Eisenhower, Georgia, sorry. So I'll pause there, Madam Chair, as to not bypass any questions you may have, and if there are none, I'll proceed.
Any questions that members have at this point? Just looking for hands to be raised or somebody to come off mute. I don't see anybody. Why don't you go ahead?
Very good. So, Madam Chair, this is a picture I took just the other week. On the left, you see a smiling Lieutenant Weiss, and this is our incident response lab. So it doesn't show the full lab. On the left side of the screen where you can't see, there's about 40 backpacks that are ready to go, full of peripherals. And the idea here is that we have a hot and ready capability where as soon as the soldiers are able to come on active duty, as soon as we can sit them down and get one of these laptops and one of those computers, or one of those laptops and one of those bags, they're ready to go. We have jump servers, which we send with them on site, which are able to establish their own wireless area network or Ethernet if they choose. And then that connects into the Cradlepoint Wi-Fi, which is hosted through AT&T FirstNet, which is a first responder network, and gives them out-of-band connectivity to really anywhere in the state where they might have to respond. And on these computers, you have a variety of different tool sets that are useful for forensic endpoint analysis and network analysis. We also have a suite of other capabilities that they can use to intercommunicate and operate as a functional team. So this is what we have for St. Paul. We issued these computers out during that event, and we maintain these here in the Cyber Coordination Cell full time and make sure that they're ready to go, which is its own process. And next, ma'am, I'd like to draw your attention to some of the partnership efforts we're undergoing. What you see here is a photo that the city published regarding the partnership from the cyber response activities that we took with the city. On the left, on the right is Major Luke Voller. He's the cyber protection team commander. Those 40 people we talked about earlier, he's their boss. And then you recognize everyone else in the photo, I'm sure. So partnership and relationship building, it's really our strategic foundation, and we really mean that. So what we found is that in the event of an emergency, the more partnerships you have in place in advance, it just helps streamline the activities, reduces the knuckle-on-knuckle friction, makes sure everyone kind of feels comfortable with who they're working with. And that's what happened in July, is because of the work we've done to reach out and engage with these different stakeholders, we did have relationships with nearly everybody that was part of that response situation from the cyber side. And these are just a few of the logos of the people and institutions we've engaged with over the last few years. And between 2024 and 2025, we've done over 200 different engagements with these different institutions and many, many more. Now, those aren't all in person. Of course, some of them are Teams meetings, phone calls on occasion. They're not all on-site coffee chats, but we are getting out and making sure we have strong partnerships and building that trust. This is an example of a cyber symposium that we run every year. This is hosted at Metro State University. Dr. Kaleem over there and their president, Betty, have done a fantastic job of being supportive of the National Guard and our efforts here in the Cyber Coordination Cell. So this event is an annual event where we bring in stakeholders from state and federal partners who are engaging in the cyber response activity space. We bring in all of the cyber forces in Minnesota to include all of the air communications people as well. And we really level set on a variety of topics. And those topics can range from threat trends that are globally happening, the evolution of ransomware, advanced persistent threat techniques, all the way to, more soft topics like how do you stay in a positive mental mindset in the cyber field when burnout is a real concern because of the fast pace of change, constant threat, constantly being on the defense. So this is a really good event. We host this every year. Welcome to attend if you like for 2026. We'll send an invite out. Here's some conference pictures we took from various conferences we attended, Madam Chair. Just kind of showing we have a bit of reach now due to the, I guess I would say successful interaction we had with the city and emergency management during the St. Paul event that has gained some traction, definitely within the state, but even beyond the state. We were invited down to Iowa State for their cyber resiliency conference, where I was able to talk to them about how we integrated in within the state emergency management structure and really provide value to the city under the governor's authority for that event, because every state now is really looking at the response scenario that undertook there, and they're looking at and say, okay, how would we do the same thing? And so they're looking at our cyber coordination cell as sort of a storyteller for them to kind of get their wheels in motion for that. So we've been doing a lot of outreach as well. We also do outreach with the Cybersecurity Summit every year. So they ask us to come and run this public sector village, which we did in coordination with Minnesota IT Services this year, which is a great opportunity and platform for all of the SLTTs of the state that are interested to come and see what the National Guard's role is within cyber prevention and response, and then what Minnesota IT Services' role is and what they can offer as well. And we found it to be very successful this year. Here's just a one slide on St. Paul. I don't think that needs any further coverage at this point. I think we're all very well aware of what happened, but I will note that our particular role, that the C3's role, was to provide that mission coordination between the city and the state and the federal agencies, operational support, resource fulfillment for our team members that were actually performing the mission, public affairs support, meeting with news media to keep the team focused on the mission. We absorbed a lot of that. And then command and control support underneath the J3's authority. And then we also performed a comprehensive postmortem for lessons learned. And the team on the top right, Madam Chair, is the initial 10, 11 packs that we sent on mission. That mission ended up being 34 people over 14 days. Cyber Shield 2025, this is the National Guard's, actually it's the nation's largest cyber event, National Guard hosted. 38 states and territories, 15 countries, 900 participants. And we had a joint team there this year from the cyber protection team, as well as our state partners with Norway. So they came and joined forces with our cyber operations forces for that event. Norway actually took first place in the Capture the Flag competition. And so we're proud to have them as allies in the cause. And then our own Lieutenant Nikki Weiss was there as well as a white cell person, which is someone who kind of stays behind the scenes and makes sure the exercise goes off well. And there's some photos from the event there. You'll see Major Luke Fuller in the middle. Another thing we do when we go out to visit with entities that request us, either through Minnesota IT Services and their whole estate plan and the navigators, or if we're asked to present at a conference, Minnesota Counties Association, HSCM, any of the regions, anywhere we go, we have a standard sort of playbook where we really want to make sure that anybody we're talking to really understands what the criteria and the process is to request state National Guard support during an emergency. And what we found is that there's just not a lot of people who understand the process in general. And then you add on the cyber component of it, and they feel this, we have no idea what to do or who to call. And so one of the things we like to do is really give them an opportunity to educate themselves on, okay, if your school or your county is hit by ransomware and you have if you meet these conditions, you can then follow this process and then we will see what the governor wants to do. But we really try to enable them and embolden them and arm them with the knowledge to say, hey, if they have no other options, the National Guard is always ready, always there, but there are conditions and there is a process for that. So we really hope that this helps illuminate the process for a lot of the rural counties, and especially folks who might not be, too apprised of the process as it stands, and make them understand that the cyber activation process is really no different than the normal Guard activation process. You just request it the same way you would for a fire or a flood. The sheriff can ask for support. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure you understood, that we do try to educate as many people as we can across the state on what the Guard's role is within cyber emergency management. And then lastly, we're really thankful for Minute's whole estate program. We find that's a great avenue to, as much as we're able to, support that program and help work in the prevention space, because the more prevention happens, the less we're needed for response, ultimately. And Madam Chair and legislative members, that concludes my presentation.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That is very comprehensive and really helps to lay out kind of where you're at and who is involved. Members, do you have any questions or comments for the presenters? And if you can't, raise your hand. If you can come off mute and just let me know. Representative Bonner?
Trying to find my raise the hand function, but I really appreciated the conversation too about working with Metro State on various training aspects and how to get your folks trained, how to keep folks in that loop. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on that relationship and how that works in practicality, and if there's any additional ways that you see that we might be able to expand the ability to do that work?
Yes, Representative Bonner, thank you for the question. It's the relationship with Metro State has been positive now for many, many years. We are the benefactors of the folks that came before us that initially built that relationship, and we're trying to maintain it and carry it to the next level. And to be honest, Dr. Faisal Kaleem is a very positive aspect as part of that relationship. He seems to have endless energy. I think he's actually probably an automaton in the fusion core somewhere in there. I don't understand it, but we benefit from it. And now you asked some specifics about our relationship and training activities, and I'm glad to offer those to you. So last year, the cyber protection team sent portions of one of their mission elements to Metro State to work with Faisal's group and the vendor of a operational technology mini water treatment pump that they have. And the goal of that was to get the members of the CPT to be able to understand, they have operational technology knowledge coming in, but we don't have anything for them to train on. They can't play with it. And so the goal was, that was the first in a series of training events that we'd like to do with Metro State that get increasingly more mature, where the members of the response team who may have to respond to an OT scenario someday are able to go to Metro State to use their equipment to train and evaluate themselves, break the thing, rebuild it, find out how to hack it, find out how to defend it when somebody else is hacking it. Red team, blue team, purple team. That's what that equipment is for that he purchased. And he's using it, of course, for his curriculum. But Metro State and the National Guard have such a good relationship where he's offered that for us to use for our training as well. Obviously, his team takes priority, but when it's not being used, we can come and play with it, which is really, really nice. And that's a very custom capability that we don't have otherwise. In order for the National Guard to get that kind of training, they have to put a request in to either Camp Mustatacock in Indiana, which is a National Guard training facility that offers that kind of training. That's a very long process, and it takes sometimes 6 to 12 months to be able to get time on their calendar. The other opportunity is West Virginia. There's another, it's called Torch in West Virginia, and it's run through ATEC, and they're able to request that facility as well. But once again, there's a lot of competing parties that are trying to gain access to those facilities and don't have a lot of time. So to be able to go to Metro State, literally right down the road, and use their equipment to do value-added training for the team has just been fantastic. Another thing we do with Metro State and have done is take advantage of their cyber range. We've contracted with them in the past to bring in our soldiers to do red team, blue team exercises, learn about full life cycle attacks and how to prevent them. And once again, a lot of that is due to the good relationship, frankly, the friendship that we have with Faisal Kaleem, Dr. Kaleem, and then Betty and the rest of the team up there. So they're our number one partner, although we are looking at, we have a little vendor dependence with Metro State. So we are kind of thinking about how do we build that kind of very fruitful synergistic relationship with other universities, because Metro State isn't the only one, right? And that's one of our targets for this year, is to try and build inroads with University of Minnesota and others to do those kind of things as well.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Representative Bonner.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. I so appreciate that. And I don't know how much interaction you have with the students, but I mean, I was just curious too if that might also be a helpful recruitment tool for the National Guard unit as well, because you clearly have very motivated students in that program looking down that road. And so was just curious about that as well. But thank you for that overview.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and just to briefly touch on that, we do see our relationship with Metro State being a good recruiting platform. We invite the students in the cyber operations program and his cybersecurity program to attend our military cyber symposium every year as well. They're invited to attend to kind of see and get a flavor of, hey, maybe this is something I want to do. If they have the skills and the interest with a dash of patriotism in them, then maybe putting on the uniform is the best thing they can do to fulfill that. And so we do that as well. And then we do some adjunct work as well. I'm not an adjunct professor there myself, but I've been invited to speak to the cyber ops and intel program night school classes. We have one of our old division G2s, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Tatarka. You don't know his name, but he was a very prominent guardsman. He worked for the FBI for about 15 years. He retired, and now he's an adjunct professor there in Faisal's program. And so he tries to bring in Guard soldiers and officers to teach and preach to his class, talking about intelligence, and makes a very good point of saying, hey, if this is something you want to do with your career, you can join the Guard and live two lives, and they're both great. And the other thing that is very interesting is that if anybody in these classes during these programs are maybe they're white hat hackers. Maybe they have a little bit of offensive mindset. Maybe they like the security pen testing world. Well, it's always a good treat to say, if you want to do this stuff for real and not get arrested and put in prison, there's one place you can do that. And that's right here, or in a 3-letter agency, this is a great gateway to. So in that regard, ma'am, hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the testifiers. So back to that slide where you had the picture with the St. Paul representatives and the incident at St. Paul last year. So can you, and then to the picture where you had all the equipment there lined up in the ready to go in the packs. Can you, and you may have already said this, so I apologize if you have, but how many times did you have to deploy in 25 or even in the last couple of years? How many times was that deployment put to use?
Yes, Senator, it was only once. The National Guard cyber team has only been actively deployed one time, and that was the St. Paul event. So, the mindset of the military and the Guard in general is you're always training, you're always doing reps and sets, you're always ready for when reality hits. In this case, reality hit, and we were ready, of course, but it's only been put to the test in real life that one time. And now, since it's been retrograded and put back into, maintenance mode, we really have the mindset of, hey, it could happen in the next 5 minutes. That's kind of how we live our life, because you really don't know. So yeah, but just the one time, Senator.
And follow up,
please.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so then, for the St. Paul incident, can you just confirm that in order to respond, you do need an order or some kind of a confirmation from the governor before you can deploy, correct?
That's correct, Senator. In order for us to be able to respond, we need a governor's executive order to initiate the Adjutant General to move forces.
Okay.
Is that correct?
And
Senator Lucero.
thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for that. And the reason I'm asking is I'm thinking going forward, I fully anticipate there will be future incidents, and I'm sure there's been incidents, obviously, at government level that there hasn't been a deployment from the Guard. But the question I'm thinking, Madam Chair, rhetorically, not necessarily looking for an answer, is because we expect further incidents in the future at government entities of various levels, how are we going to determine the threshold when it's necessary for the Guard to be deployed? Because, is it because it's a major city, or it could be a much smaller event, but it could be a really small city, but relative to that small city, it could be a major event just due to the nature of their size or lack of skills. So how do we determine when it's appropriate for the governor to call that out? So anyway, we could, if anybody has comments on that, I would welcome that. But again, I'm not necessarily looking for an answer if there isn't one.
Yeah, I don't know. Lieutenant Colonel Morgan, would you have a comment on that? I mean, it does seem like your slide, you indicated there is a kind of a direct process that's supposed to be followed, and that other entities are going to be kind of weighing in or contacted before you would be activated, and so the governor's office. But how do you think that those entities in between, like I'm seeing like sheriff, BCA, Homeland Security, and Emergency Management, all are kind of in that line of the process. How do they evaluate the significance of an event and whether it's warranted to be passed along to the governor's level, who would make the final or that decision? If you
Yeah, Madam Chair. Of course. I think to answer your question, I'll start, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues for their input as well. But there is I think it's important, and multiple times this has happened where we've been made aware of an event of a ransomware type nature or a significant cyber emergency within the state. A couple examples: a county in the southern region of Minnesota, sheriff's office was hit. That was Moore County, for example. And then we were made aware of St. Paul via informal communications before the event of the governor activation occurred. So because of the nature of the Cyber Coordination Cell being engaged full time in the information streams regarding the state's 16E.36 law, which you all know, the mandatory reporting law, we are made aware of events in the state, and that is sort of for us to see, okay, was it a small event? Okay, was it a business email compromise? Well, they're not going to call the National Guard for that. Was it a major event, like a major ransomware shutdown of a K-12 district? Well, that is something where then we say, okay, how can we help facilitate procedural movement if they do want to decide to activate the National Guard? And as an example was, we had conversations with some stakeholders in that other county I mentioned that, said, hey, the BCA and myself were on a call. I was explaining the process to them. If you want to activate the National Guard, this is the process. You need to call the watch officer, the BCA, the desk officer, and ask for National Guard support. And then it's really up to them to follow that Minnesota emergency operations process. And then at that point, there's a filtration, I don't want to say filtration, but there's a vetting agency within HSCM that vets that. And as my understanding is, if that's it approves, then it goes to the governor's office and the governor makes the ultimate decision. So, but I will say, Madam Chair, that my team is available and we have been involved in discussions before any of the formal requests are made to help make sure that the situation would potentially be appropriate. If somebody gave me a call and said, hey, my computer's running slow, should I activate the National Guard? I would advise against that, because it's obviously not something worth anybody's attention. But if it's a full-scale ransomware lockup, which means that school's out of business and testing is off, or a county gets hit, or a city or a sheriff's office, and the resourcing is not there for them to tackle this on their own, and it becomes clear that this might be something that they should request guard support, I can advise them of that, of course. And I see that being my role whenever somebody needs that consultation. And then I'll pass it off to Lieutenant Colonel Athman for some further context.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Lucero. Just to address your question, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Athman, Director of Operations. We treat cyber response in a very, very generic way, the same way we would treat a winter storm response, a flood response, or an out-of-state EMAC request to provide forces. Brian's team, Lieutenant Colonel Morgan, just happens to be more highly specialized on the cyber side. So, Senator Lucero, I don't think you saw it, but there's a kind of a flow chart of the way the request goes through very formally. But if you kind of take that back and looked at that chart again, you'd see kind of a spaghetti mess across of it, where we're coordinating with all of those elements kind of through the life cycle continuum all the way up to the approval and beyond. When Brian's team with the Cyber Coordination Cell really does a good job of being able to help, as he talked, to really get entities to be able to scope what it is they're looking for in probably one of their darkest days.
And Madam Chair, Senator Lucero, just one thing I want to point out too is it's important to note the Cyber Coordination Cell obviously is a state funded organization, right? So those 4 personnel are state employees, so they can go out and do coordination stuff. They don't require a governor's executive order for them to go out and do coordination, understand the scope of the attack and what elements may be needed to support that. So they provide that feedback back to our organization, who is in constant communication with the governor's office, and can provide those updates to them as well. So that kind of helps speed that process up in the event there is an activation, that we can get that governor's executive order much quicker.
Senator Lucero, anything else?
That's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the testifiers.
Thank you. Any other commission members have questions? Not seeing any more hands raised or people popping on. I guess I just have a couple questions. One, I just wondered, you've done a lot of outreach and to conferences, and you're interacting with people across the state and outside the state. Are there any themes that you've drawn from when you do Q&A with people, or kind of, are there themes that come up that you think across the state where you're hearing particular needs that we should be aware of or should be addressed? I'd be interested in if you've been hearing anything or any sort of common themes.
That's a good question, Madam Chair. Off the top of my head, I could say most of the time what we see as a theme at the conferences is sort of, it seems to be all new for them. Almost every time we go, kind of raise our hands, say like, who knows, what the National Guard is? Okay, everybody knows the National Guard is. We do cyber. Like almost nobody knows that the National Guard does cyber. But more holistically, once we educate them in terms of our role and we ask questions, I would say, there's a large amount of concern in the community at large, and that goes for critical infrastructure, SLTTs. People are watching the news. Many stakeholders in the state have been impacted in one way or another by financial fraud, cybercrime enabled financial fraud from overseas, to include ransomware. And if you're a school administrator, you're thinking about active shooters and that disaster. You're thinking about ransomware and that disaster. So there's a lot of concern that, hey, when is this going to happen to us, and are we ready, and what can we do to get ready? And so I think, by and large, I think a lot of folks are trying to look at themselves and say, how can we use our resources and optimize our capabilities to defend ourselves and prepare for what may come? And then they also, of course, look at, the state. A lot of entities, 80 of the 87 counties, I think, still, use minute services one way or another. And so, I think there's a sort of a mindset that, like, okay, we only have so many resources. We don't have enough resources to do everything we need to do. So how do we get more? And I think for us, what we typically do is say, well, more can mean working with, Minnesota IT Services and their whole estate program, which has subsidized resources which are available for you to take on. So there's just a lack of knowledge and awareness typically of what those things are that are available for them. We also point them towards federal resources. The Critical Infrastructure and Security Agency has a lot of preparation resources which are left of bang focused, which we point them to and then say, hey, so I'd say the common theme, ma'am, is just, sort of a lack of awareness of what the resources that already exist are. And we're working on that actively. I'm also a member of John Risveel's cyber task force. And part of our baseline subcommittee is we're doing some work to, provide a central watering hole, if you will, for all of the SLTT community to get access to all of this information at one stop. So, it's not just us going out to conferences here and there and his navigators going out here and there. It's more like everybody go here and just see what's available. So I'd say the number one theme is sort of lack of awareness of existing resources. That's probably the only thing I'm probably comfortable saying without reaching too far.
Okay. Thank you. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I have. I guess in the meantime, I did invite John Israel and Brandon Hirsch to be in on this meeting, and I don't know if they want to offer any perspective on the discussion we've had about, you know, the work that the National Guard is doing, and if there are any other partnering opportunities that they would see available. If they do, we can go to Mr. Israel if you'd like to introduce yourself and proceed.
Thanks, Madam Chair and members. For the record, my name is John Israel. I'm an Assistant Commissioner for Minnesota IT Services and the state's Chief Information Security Officer. I will just amplify a lot of the commentary that Lieutenant Colonel Morgan and our National Guard friends have shared today, because this partnership and relationship has been a phenomenal resource to Minnesota entities, particularly just the opportunity to the promise that the Cyber Coordination Cell brings, and the relationships that that's helped build, and the doors that it's opened with local communities and areas around the state to really help build on those cyber resources. I think we do have a long way to go. I think there's a lot of opportunities that we see, and I would agree fully with Lieutenant Colonel Morgan's assessment that really getting more engagement with local governments and more participation is probably our key, probably the surest way to build on that cyber defense. I think we've got the resources and programs that outlined. It's getting that participation and engagement is going to continue to make Minnesota entities safer.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would say if there aren't any other member questions or comments, kind of one last time. I really appreciate your presentation today, and I think, you know, going forward, if you see that there is a way that we can better facilitate some of the interactions that you have through legislation, if there's any you know, anything that's kind of a barrier or could help facilitate greater communication with local entities, if you can please share that with us, and we can see if there's a way that we could introduce any legislation to help that. That would be, I guess, my only request right now. And again, thank you very much for participating today. Did you have any other final comments that you'd like to make before we close, Lieutenant Colonel Morgan?
No, Madam Chair, looking across the room, I think we're very happy to be allowed to present in front of your commission today and yourself, and thanks for your time and feedback.
All right. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is just about future meeting topics in our schedule. We do have a meeting set for February 11th, 2026 at 2 o'clock. That one, we are able to be in a room in the Capitol, the one that we've traditionally used for commission meetings. And at that meeting, right now, what I'm hoping to cover would be to have a discussion about rural utilities and critical infrastructure, and get some perspective, hopefully from one of the rural utility associations, about ways that we could be assisting legislatively with, I don't know, actions that could help these entities better address their operational needs in the area of cybersecurity. We know that small communities still have to protect their critical infrastructure, but they may not have extensive resources available to be able to do all of the cybersecurity hardening that's needed. So that is one topic that I'm hoping to have a presenter talk about and have us discuss. Also, like to get an update from Minute prior to session starting, kind of where they're at with legislative possible proposals and requests that might come forward. And then do a quick review of potential bills that members want to discuss as we get ready for session. And then we'll also try and have a public comment period at that meeting. Are there any questions or comments about the future meeting and any requests for additional topics to add? Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was thinking, so earlier this week at I think it was Tuesday, the governor's press conference on the paid family leave, the deed commissioner was there and explaining how he had confidence in the processes to prevent fraud or other things. With this new system, I'm wondering if it might be beneficial for this commission to potentially bring deed in, or the commissioner in, and potentially we do have a closed door session that just describes some of what measures have been put into place to protect those processes. Because when I was listening to him, he was deliberately vague, and understandably so in a public setting. But just to help gain some more confidence, I wonder if that might be of value.
Yeah, that does seem very timely. The program has been launched. We know the system's active, and that does seem like a timely topic. Maybe I can talk with you more about what specifically you'd like to see covered and whether we do that in our meeting or in a closed session. So, thank you. Anybody else have comments or questions?
I would just to that. I think a big part of what DEED is doing on that is they're the kind of the guinea pigs for the rollout of the login MN capability, and we might be able to just kind of expand on Senator Lucero's request a little bit and have Mr. Israel give us a related presentation about what login MN is and how it will work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other requests or comments?
I know I mentioned this with regard to login MN before, but it would be very helpful, Madam Chair, if we could also get some updates on the roadmap for login MN and what's in flight and what's up next to add to that program would also be beneficial.
Yep, makes sense. And I imagine that Mr. Hirsch is taking notes on this, and then I'll talk more with him after the meeting. Anything else? If not, I do not have any other business, and there being no other business for the commission today, and so I will say that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.